Hi, this is Lamar, and you're listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. A third space is a term that refers to a safe space for people to come together for respectful dialogue in a spirit of listening, sharing, and learning. In this podcast, we explore what it means to have third space conversations, and we try to model them. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please be sure to subscribe, share it, and of course, like it. The more people join us, the quicker we get to third space as a society. Now let's get to third space today.
Hey, Lamar, how's it going today?
Hey, Tom. Doing really well today. How about you?
Well, yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing pretty well. I've been getting my exercise. I've been doing my physical therapy. I've been golfing. But beyond that, I can't remember what I've been doing.
So you told me off camera that you've actually been pretty successul with your golfing, right?
I've been pretty successful, and I'm embarrassed how successful I have been.
So why is that?
Well, because, when you win, they call out, at these events I go to, they call out your name and there's a little prizes attached to it and stuff. I mean, the shirt was
that a prize? So, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I used a gift card that I won to buy this shirt at a pro shop. And the other day I won three things. I got closest to the pin.
Yeah.
3 feet 7 inches, almost a hole in one.
Yeah.
My team won by 9 strokes over the next closest team.
That's a lot of strokes.
We were minus 21. We were 21 under as a team. It was stunning. I've never been on a team that has been over 20.
Was that because of the number of handicaps you had?
It was because everybody played really, really well. And a couple guys had high handicaps.
Yeah.
And so, when you factor in the those points, it really brings your score down. And then I'm not sure why I won the other prize. I think it was because maybe my net score was very low. I had my net score was 68, which was 4 under par.
Okay.
So,
well, congratulations either way.
Thank you. But I'm honestly just kind of embarrassed by it because yesterday was the 4th day in a row that I have, or the 4th event in a row that I've played that I have walked away having won something. And so,
are they getting tired of you winning? Are your
there's
players?
a risk of that. There's a risk, people will begin to mumble under their breath at
Here
you.
he comes again.
Here he comes.
Oh, no.
So,
enjoy it.
So tomorrow I need to lose. So,
yeah.
I'll work on that.
In the world of sports, and notice I said sports.
Sports.
In the world of sports, fame can leave as quickly as it comes.
This isn't going to last. I can tell you that. It's not going to last. And I'm going to begin to weep.
Okay.
So what about you? What's happening with you?
On the spur of the moment, my wife and I said, we need to get away for a little bit. So we hooked up the camper, drove 4 hours south into Oklahoma at a state park on Grand Lake of the Cherokees in northeastern Oklahoma. Beautiful place.
Nice.
We had a nice couple of days. I think I sent you a picture of the shore and the lake and the view right out of our camper. We had an awesome spot. I mean, it was like. I don't know why nobody booked that spot, but it was gorgeous and beautiful sunsets. We got into bird apps. So my wife has this app that identifies birds singing and their calls.
Is that the one from Cornell University?
Yes.
Isn't that a great app?
That's fantastic. So we took a walk, took a hike, a very small hike, about a mile through the woods. And we had the app on and just listening to all the different birds and identifying. It was awesome. We had fun time.
Yeah. That is pretty cool.
Yep. So anyway, we got 2 days away and just had a good time. The weather broke, it's been like in the mid 90s, with humidity running in the 60% or 50% maybe here, which is pretty humid. Yeah. But everything broke when we went down there. So it was, it was like in the low 80s. It was very nice.
Yeah. Oh, very, very nice. Well,
Yeah.
it broke, but did you fix it? That's
Yeah, it's 85 now, and this is still the morning here in Kansas, so
excellent.
it'll get nice and warm this afternoon.
It will. It will.
Yeah. Hey,
So
we have a good
oh man,
good show coming up here.
we do. Don't change that dial.
Don't change the dial. Remember that?
Yeah, don't change that dial. Yeah, it is. It's going to be okay. So truth is, we record this after we've done the interview.
Yes.
So we know
it's
what's
gonna be
coming
good.
up, and
Yep.
we know it's really good. So
Yep.
yeah. So but what is it?
Okay, so a friend of yours that you've known
Yep.
for a lot of years that you introduced me to most recently, and thank you for that, Stan Martin, is going to be our guest, and he is a passionate man about the work he's doing in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah. And I love this. He is known as Stan the Man.
Stan the Man.
And he
will tell us that
explains-
story. Yeah.
He explains where that comes from, and it is wonderful. So anyway.
Well, let's get to the interview.
All right, we're going to open that door to the green room and welcome Stan Martin in.
Here we go.
Stan, welcome.
Thank you.
Good you have you with us, Stan.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here, guys.
Oh,
I think.
Yeah, it'll be good. You're fine.
it'll be good. But so Lamar, do you ask him or do I ask him?
Oh, go ahead. You can ask him.
Okay,
instead.
so Stan, did you get that fabulous basket of goodies in the green room that Lamar was supposed to put there?
I believe it's in the mail.
Wait a minute. I was supposed to send it?
Yeah, you were supposed to send it.
Oh, I thought you were sending it this time.
Oh,
because
for
you had to
crying-
get your credit card back on.
Yeah, right.
Well, we'll get it to you, Stan.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Okay.
It will definitely be in the mail sometime.
I got you. No, I won't hold it against you guys.
Okay.
All right, man. Thank you.
But it's really good to see you again, Stan, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Stan, I've known you for a number of years and worked with you, and Lamar's gotten to know you as we've been preparing for this podcast. But our listeners and our viewers, of course, this may be their first time meeting you. So who is Stan Martin, and how do you like to describe yourself to people whom you are meeting for the first time?
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Lamar, for the opportunity to be on the show here. I really look forward to having our conversation here at Third Space. My dad gave me the nickname Stan the Man, and at a very early age. So most of my friends, and folks I work with, they call me Stan the Man because I get things done. And that's something that I've always held myself accountable to. Whether it's for fun or just business or pleasure, etc. It's just always instilled a sense of responsibility, in me at a very early age.
I had never heard that story, Stan.
Yeah.
That is
you learn something new every day.
Man, I do. I mean, that is wonderful in terms of like kind of creating a not an expectation. What would be the word? It's not a legacy because that's kind of like looking back, but almost the kind of path it sets you on is really interesting. We sometimes forget about the power of naming, right?
Well, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I like to introduce myself, when I'm meeting people for the first time. Words matter, and you want to make sure that, you give folks in this day and age something positive to remember you by. So, who was that guy? Oh, that was Stan the Man. So,
yeah.
All right.
I love that.
Hopefully it sticks.
And it's a great story too.
Yeah,
the origin story is wonderful. It really is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very nice.
Well, could you maybe give us a little bit more about what you do, kind of how you get things done? But in what realm do you get things done, Stan?
Excellent question. Yeah, I'm a I'm a son of Buffalo, as I like to say. Born and raised here in the city of Buffalo, New York. Grew up on the east side of Buffalo, and at a very early age, I recognized that my community was different. My community was different than a lot of other communities, and that in terms of being different, that opportunities and resources that was available to others necessarily wasn't available to me, and my friends and others in the community. So the work that I've done over the past 20 something odd years, maybe when I have more hair, now it grows on my face,
Yeah,
has really been about engaging the community, engaging the community in a real authentic way. In particular, those who have some of the greatest needs and maybe perhaps some of the least amount of resources. But we're resilient. That term, we find a way to get things done, and I'm very fortunate to have been able to match my passion and my purpose, together.
Mhm.
So, community engagement, amplifying the voices of others, coming alongside, others, to really make a difference, in this, in this world, So that's been my work.
Very nice. You just said community engagement. And so, and you describe yourself, and I've known you in the context I've known you for many years now, as really an outstanding community engager. You like to refer to what is known as authentic community engagement, which is a wonderful term. Can you say more about what that means, and give us some recent examples of
Yes.
how you have been doing that in Buffalo?
Right. Authentic community engagement. Oftentimes when we're working with the community, as health providers or professionals, we come in as if we have all the answers. I'm here to save you, da da da, et cetera, et cetera. You throw the cape back, and and you wait for the theme music to come in, and it's really it's not about that. It's about really listening. Listening to what the needs and what the aspirations are of those who are mostly impacted, within that environment, within that community. Community is large, so it could be something that's school, youth group, faith-based organization. When I'm talking about community, so meeting those individuals, where they're at, and really not just identifying the challenges, also the solutions from their lens. From my lens, for example, I might say, hey, well, you know what? Like fresh fruits and vegetables are more important. And from their lens, they were like, no, you know what? We need stop signs. We need speed bumps, what have you, as a priority. So how can we then have some authentic conversations, with folks that allows us to move forward in a way that we're prioritizing what's most important to the community, not necessarily what's most important to stand the man.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's not an either or, it's an and. Because these things don't work in silos. They're oftentimes intertwined or interconnected. And an example of that, if I could just real quickly, Tom.
Oh yeah, please do.
I was working with the youth group on, surrounding developing a basketball league, one of my favorite sports.
Yeah. Oh, we'll have to talk about that later.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was more concerned when I said when I used the term league. I was more concerned about competing, and games and things of that nature. And after conversations, what they really wanted was skill development. No, we want opportunities to, learn how to, improve our skills, whether it's dribbling, whether it's shooting, whether it's passing. What they really wanted was a clinic, to improve their services to then play in other leagues. So if I hadn't listened, and spent the time to, have those bi-directional conversations, we would have missed out.
Yeah. Yeah. Stan, I just want to clarify one thing for folks. And they will learn this, I think, when they go onto your website as well. But much of your community engagement in your career has really been around public health issues, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Very, very good.
I'm fascinated with your example there with the league, with the listening to what people are saying, because sometimes people don't necessarily know how to express what they are really meaning or wanting. And so listening sometimes is helping everyone involved come to an understanding. Like in your case, what we're really talking about here is skill development. And I would imagine working in the field you are with health equity, with community engagement, that sometimes listening gets to be challenging. Can you give us an idea of where some of those challenges are when you're working with people, working with communities, working with groups, where trying to help move along and understand becomes challenging?
Yeah, yes, definitely a great example in real life. A initiative that I'm working on is actually to remove menthol tobacco, from the shelves here in the city of Buffalo. It's a part of a national initiative, a national movement. It's already been done in Massachusetts, California, Canada, and the European Union. And it's something that we're working on here, in my hometown. And the goal, ultimately, I should say, is to save lives. To save lives from the scourge of menthol tobacco in particular, because we know it's the menthol, it's the flavor that masks the harshness, that masks the poison, that helps the poison, go down smoother. And it's easier to start and harder to quit. And that being said, based upon research and science, we know that it has been intentionally marketed in communities of color. It's been intentionally marketed to African Americans, Hispanics, the LGBTQIA plus, community, a plethora of marginalized communities. And what we've been doing is really amplifying the voices of the youth and the community to say that, what, we want this out of our community. Statistics shows us, not to get too far ahead of myself, but statistics shows us that over 50,000 lives are lost annually, in terms of those who identify with the Black diaspora, as a result of menthol tobacco use. And 85% of those who smoke or utilize menthol tobacco, die, as a result of that use, or has some tobacco related illness. So the intentional targeted marketing, once again, on marginalized communities, is something historically that the tobacco industry has done, and they refuse to, as the song goes, one of the temptations to let us go. So what I mean by that, they continuously create other products, that addict and attract our youth, other generations, future generations to come, to be replacement smokers and vapors.
I think that idea, or the information you're sharing, that menthol has in the tobacco industry and its marketing has been targeted, or is being targeted. I think that's a new concept for a lot of our listeners as well. And you're saying there's kind of a national or even an international movement to disclose this. Can you tell us a little bit about what was the impetus? Where did this information come from, and how did you pick up on it in a way that you're targeting it in Buffalo?
Yes. Well, I've been involved with public health, I think, as we mentioned earlier, for over 20 years now. And I've worked with the New York State Bureau of Tobacco Control for a number of years prior to starting my own company, Stan Martin Consulting LLC. We're the anchor organization of the movement here in Buffalo. And I have the pleasure of partnering with other national organizations like the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, the Center for Black Health and Equity, as well as the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. So due to those relationships, those partnerships, we're able to, and very fortunate to not just address the national impact of menthol, but able to drill down into local municipalities, communities that really can create a grassroots movement. Not necessarily a top-down approach, but a grassroots movement. And any successful movement started within the community, started with the churches, started with those who are mostly, impacted, by it. And civil rights taught us that. In addition, this is the charge, to really galvanize, to mobilize, and to engage, youth, community leaders from all walks of life, in that, once again, that authentic manner, and to raise awareness, education, and then create a pathway to action, and that action changes and challenges social norms, whereas though we probably could think about a time where though smoking in the office was pretty popular.
Oh, yeah.
Go to a bar and restaurant, and people would have a smoke or what have you, or take a smoke break, things in that name. Or I'm dating myself, candy cigarettes. Well, guess what? That has changed now. We're creating a generation of culture of more health consciousness, and in particular, when we look at marginalized communities, oftentimes it's they can wait. Let me just be blunt. We'll get to that. No, it's time that we prioritize, and not wait for someone else to come in to save us, but to save ourselves. And I often ask the question, what's the price of a Black life? What's the price, of preventing youth from ever starting that we're willing to pay? Go ahead, Tom.
Well, no, that's fine. Stan, what you're saying, I think is so really important. And I wanted to ask you, for as long as I've known you, you've worked in public health. And I know that when you picked up this, the tobacco projects, in particular this menthol tobacco project, it seemed to me that I saw a passion emerge from you that had always been there, but it's like it was like passion plus on the menthol tobacco, right? And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about why public health in general and why this project means so much to you.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the origin story in terms of Stan the man.
Yeah.
My dad said, you know what? Okay, all right. You get things done. I can count on you. I can rely on you. Not that you couldn't rely on my other brothers, or siblings, what have you. And just that sense of responsibility. And in terms of, to your question, when I began my career in public health and tobacco control some years ago, I read a document in my orientation, and it was the quote that was made by a tobacco executive when they were asked, well, hey, do you smoke? You create this product, and it's very lucrative. Do you, and do you smoke? Do you utilize the product? And I quote, and people can look it up. The tobacco executive response was, I'll paraphrase a little bit, we don't smoke that. We reserve the right to smoke for the young, the Black, the poor, and the stupid.
Wow.
And that's what I said. And I took a step back, from the document, which was a result of the Master Settlement Agreement. And I said, they're talking about me.
Yeah.
They're talking about my friends. They're talking about my family members. They're talking about my relatives. They're talking about my community. And I said to myself at a very, young age, I might have been in my early 20s, 30s, whatever. And I said, I got to do something about this. I'm either going to be a part of the problem by even though I never smoked before, okay, or vape, anything of that nature, or I'm going to be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
Being a part of the problem is being silent. Being a part of the problem is not sharing the knowledge and information, with others. So I decided at a very early age that in my career, I would be a part of the solution. And when I had the opportunity, to double down on my own intellectual property, that I would create, a entity, whereas a organization that would allow me to address public health issues, but improve public health outcomes for those who look like me, and do it unapologetically.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people say, well, you either got to see, you got to see at the table. Sometimes you have to build your own table and reset that table, and have the courage to do so. It's not easy. And yet, and still to have the courage, to step out on faith, to make a difference.
What an image, Stan, you just gave.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
my goodness.
And
We've
impacted
always
me.
talked about making a seat at the table for folks, right? But sometimes you got to build your own table.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Reset the table. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
Lamar, can I double down real quick?
oh, absolutely.
And in terms of resetting the table, in my experience, just a conversation, we oftentimes, we invite people that have, and I get it, like a shared mission, a shared vision, like-minded ideas, things of that nature. And that has value. And at some point in time, we also have to listen to those who might have a different view, a different perspective, and that's hard. That is challenging, and it's also, it takes a unique skill to have those bi-directional conversation, in a respectful manner, that you're able to listen, to one another, because essentially what everyone, in my opinion, people want to be seen and they want to be heard. And if you're able to hit the bullseye, as we say in certain circles, whereas though you feel that, what, we may disagree, and I feel like I've been heard. I feel like, that my opinion does matter, and that we can then craft ideas, strategies, whereas we don't have blind spots.
Yeah.
We can take the blinders off, and then we can address those blind spots in order to move forward.
Yeah.
I think that also keeps people at the table instead of leaving the table. When we even disagree, but we're willing to recognize the value of having that conversation. Yeah. Such an important image, I think, that you put out there, Stan. I all of us on this podcast, to some degrees, are studying human behavior, right? That's part of what we're trying to understand. And I know, we all know that addiction, we know that marketing, and we know perception is very, very powerful. All of those things are very, and I can imagine, I can imagine the challenge that you might have building a case for changing this whole kind of image and marketing piece around menthol in tobacco with those who don't want it to change, or those who like the image, or those who are addicted. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges you might have around the power of marketing and imaging?
Yes. I mean, excuse me. In terms of the power of marketing and imaging, can I walk along this timeline with me for a moment, just for a moment, in terms of marketing? All right. In the early 50s, less than 5% who identify as African American smoked menthol cigarettes. less than 5%.
Hmm.
In the 60s, that number pretty much tripled to almost 15% of those who identify as African American smoke menthol tobacco. In the early 70s, 80s, that number tripled again to roughly around 45, 42%. Now today, as a result of the advertising and marketing, even free giveaways, at one point in time, sponsorships of different concerts, festivals, cultures. Now, 85% of African Americans, like I mentioned earlier, 85% who identify with the Black diaspora or as African American smoke menthol tobacco. That's the Africanization, all right, of menthol tobacco in the Black community.
Wow.
That's the power of marketing. And the tobacco industry knows who is the most brand loyal customer in today's society.
Mm-hmm.
Our youth. Okay. So they're promoting a image, whether it's a healthier lifestyle, you're going to be rich and famous, or remember, I want to be like Mike. I know I'm dating myself. Michael Jordan for my fans out there, not LeBron James. However, the power of marketing, to promote an image, a lifestyle as identification, that is so beyond influential. That is building that brand loyalty. So now when you look at tobacco, African Americans, Blacks, whites, or have you, other ethnic groups, menthol is considered, that's a part of Black culture. If I'm Black, if I'm African American, I want to be cool, which was a brand. All right. Well, I'll smoke menthol cigarettes. Okay. We as a people created a lot of things, but menthol wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
So on top of that marketing, now when you break it down, Lamar and Tom, now we flood the community with these products. There's 10 to 12 more menthol advertising or tobacco retail licensing in communities of color than in communities outside, all right, of that population, of that demographic. And as a result of that, okay, you have more shelf space when you walk into a bodega, when you walk into a corner store or a convenience store. In those communities, you will see behind the teller a power wall. More shelf space is given to menthol cigarettes, all right, in those communities. So easy accessibility, all right, the intentional target marketing, what does it lead to? Greater, higher health disparities and a continuation of health inequities. So that's the plan.
I'm wondering, so so the menthol masks the taste, masks the poison, as you said earlier. And so very clever marketing. Are they using a similar tactic on other products that prove to be harmful, mostly to communities of color? That the first thing that comes to mind for me is like vaping, the flavored vapes and all of that kind of stuff. But is there anything else that you can think of that they are using a similar kind of approach to market harmful products specifically to communities of color?
Yeah. Well, certainly. I think historically, you could look at, in my opinion, the malt liquor, in earlier days.
Yeah.
It's the same playbook, all right, just different product.
Got it.
And one of the things, Lamar, wanted to point out to your earlier question, because we say upfront to folks, and we promote this message, we're not against those who smoke or vape. It's not us versus them. That's what the tobacco industry and others manufacturers who are flooding marginalized communities with these products when used as intended kills or create health problems. They want to keep us divided. So what we do, we disarm that narrative, and we say that we come alongside you, to provide you with tools and resources that when you're ready to quit, all right, we have a pathway to quit. And that is, here we're very fortunate in our backyard to have Roswell Park, the New York State Smokers Quit Line, that provides NRT, nicotine replacement therapy, that provides, gums, lozenges, the patches. All right. For those who are eligible, it's freely available, including proactive counseling. And the thing about it, folks, most people who smoke want to quit. It's just so hard to do so. I was going to say something else. It's just so hard to do so.
Yeah.
So when I love it, Lamar, when I'm having these conversations in the community, and you disarm folks and say, hey, I'm not against those who smoke or vape. This is what I'm against. And most people say, yeah, you know what? That you know what? Yeah. The advertising in our community, the different. If I can't afford a pack of cigarettes, I can buy a loose cigarette. $15 for a pack of cigarettes. That's the cost here in New York State today. Other states it might be, a little cheaper or what have you. However, we know that folks are buying loose cigarettes or loosies, as they call it, for $1. So, folks become, empowered, to say, wait a moment, let me take back the narrative. Let me take control of not only my life and also, all right, how I can, prevent my next generation, whether it's my youth, my child, my grandchildren, and others, from, becoming, a part of this addiction.
Yeah.
Most people want to share, they want to share their story. They want to share their testimony. And we provide them an opportunity and a platform to do so in a non-judgmental way. So.
What do you say to folks that say to you that are advocating just simply banning menthol cigarettes, and products of that nature? Is that something you're in favor of, or is how do you feel about it?
Yeah. There's two forces here. There's good and evil, right? At play here in our society. So let me start with evil first for a moment. All right. So, why are they selling tobacco products anyway? And youth and folks who smoke and those who don't, for profit. Okay, all right. They want to make money. All right, and the tobacco industry pushes a false narrative, and the false narrative is this right here: that creating a ban on menthols, all right, will increase a illicit market, a black market, so to speak, all right, of these products. All right, there's no evidence that prove that. All right. Secondly, that more people of color or in these marginalized communities will be, criminalized for possession of menthol or purchasing menthol cigarettes. That's not true. That's incorrect. That's the fear mongering that the propaganda that the tobacco wants to, promote. The truth of the matter is this right here. The onus is on the manufacturers, on the retailers. All right. So that's where the responsibility lies at. So therefore, we know that the tobacco industry once again wants to promote this false agenda or this propaganda to create fear. All right. And to create, a false narrative that, people are going to be harassed by the police. That's just poor policing. We know that, when we look at our history, police brutality, and I'm just going to leave it there, is an issue. It's not this issue, though. So that's the false narrative. The piece
I'm really curious about who you have conversations with. I mean, is it with the end user of the product? Is it with the retail? Is it with lawmakers? I mean, where are the conversations that you're focusing on? And some of them have to be very difficult, but where are those conversations happening and how are they going?
Yeah, the conversation is happening at every level. So in terms of with our youth, our young adults who are in college, fraternities and sororities, all right, with residents, everyday folks like us, citizens, regardless of race and ethnicity, all right. They're happening with businesses. We've had a local business in the heart of the city in Buffalo that has, made it a conscious decision not to sell any alcohol or tobacco. All right. We have conversations I mentioned earlier with smokers as well as with those who smoke and also those who don't smoke. And also we have conversations, we have legislation with our elected officials, the Buffalo Common Council, to actualize the aspirations, of this movement. So it's very important to have these conversations, as I mentioned earlier, not in the silo, not in the echo chamber, all right, in a very open, authentic manner that then allows us to address and meet people, where they're at. Now, just because you have conversation, just because you have information, and Tom and Lamar, you all probably can relate to this. Information alone don't change behavior.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The environment has to change in order to support the individual behavior change that's necessary in order for one to, achieve, better health outcomes or a better quality of life, that they aspire for themselves, So it's very important to have the takeaway, those conversations at every level, and as some folks say, no wrong door, no missed opportunity. To really to have meaningful impact and to go to scale.
Lamar here. I know that this podcast is going a little long today, but hang in there with us. It's going to be worth it. If you need to take a break, go ahead. And while on the break, be sure to take a moment and hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe. Share this podcast with somebody, and even send us a comment. You can send me an email at lamarthirdspace@gmail.com. Now remember, that's Lamar, the number 3, RD. Now back to the podcast.
In following up with what Lamar asked, I'm wondering in the context of those conversations that you're having with folks, some of them have probably been pretty challenging, and maybe
absolutely
downright. Some people may become downright defensive or angry and even offended, by you. Can you, without breaking any confidentiality, of course, but can you give us an illustration or example of a challenging conversation that you have had over menthol tobacco and how you manage that?
Yeah, I think one of the main things is that, or the experience is that you're taking away someone's right. And the
yeah, explain that a little bit. What do you mean by taking away their?
Taking away the question is, or the comment is that you're taking away my right to smoke. You're taking away my right, to vape. Okay. So, and people, once again, these are passionate conversations. These are conversations that, sometimes, family members disagree. I'm gonna say family members, friends, friends disagree, things of that nature. So that's why it's very important, to listen, and to share, and have conversations that, yes, it is a right, all right, to smoke, and no one's taking away that right to smoke. And what we know to be true, the and part, and we know that, Black and brown communities has been disproportionately targeted, with this product. Your zip code should not be or determine your life expectancy. Like, wait a moment, what did you just say? Yeah, your zip code, where you live, should not determine, all right, your life expectancy.
So unpack that a little bit. I know what you're talking about, but many of our listeners may not. Can you unpack that a little bit? What that means?
So when we talked about the marketing, when we talked about the intentional marketing in certain areas, people aren't aware that I live in a zip code. Let's say here in Buffalo, I'm gonna use me as an example, 14215. Okay, the life expectancy of someone who lives in my zip code is 10 to 12 years less than someone who lives outside of the city of Buffalo, as a result of not only tobacco use, but also the social determinants of health, where you live, work, learn, and play, your environment. So that's why I say your zip code should not determine that.
Now, we should probably explain, because a lot of people listen to this podcast, they don't watch it. And if they haven't figured this out already, you're an African American male living in a predominantly African American zip code.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So therefore, and I would encourage people, I don't want to do the homework for you, look up health disparity, look up inequities and look at your community, and identify, where are the gaps, where are the opportunities, and you'll see it so clearly. You can look at back in time where so racial profiling, redlining, people of color couldn't buy homes in certain areas. And that was real. And that impacted, income, that impacted access to food, that impacted access to, not just access, let me back up, quality, access to quality food, quality transportation, quality healthcare. All right. And these things are all essential for one to live, a long, fulfilling life.
Yeah.
And then when we break it down by zip code, when we break it down by geographical area, we see that that certain communities have been left out. Certain communities, have greater needs. It's not because people don't want a better way of life or live a healthier life. It's because of the fact that there's systemic and structural racism, things at play, all right, that perpetuate a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And tobacco is a part of that cycle.
I want to pull us back just a little bit to some of the conversation that relates to the table. But yet that image is, and the way you've described it, just kind of stuck with me. When you have conversations that are challenging and are really, really, this is such an important topic that you've got this passion for. Can you talk you've talked a little bit about listening. Beyond listening and pushing that out maybe further, how does this role that Tom and I have trying to get our hands and head around, this civil dialogue, how has it played out for you successfully, or you've talked about a corner store that is no longer selling alcohol or tobacco. Are there other examples you can give us about how impactful this approach that you and others are taking is having on the community?
Yes, I think, Lamar, to your point, COVID taught us a lot, and unfortunately we had a massacre that took place, here in the city of Buffalo,
Yes.
on the 514 massacre, where, people lost their lives and people were injured. And my heart goes out, to the family or any listeners, that might have been directly impacted by that, massacre. And we call it, we say massacre because it was intentional. All right. And as a result of that, it also shined a light on these disparities in terms of not just tobacco, but access to food, access to, the quality services in terms of healthcare services. Why is it that there's only 2 grocery stores on the east side of Buffalo? And where the massacre took place at, it was at a grocery store. It really galvanized the fact of the community that these systems or that these issues are not isolated. They're one of the same. They might look different, however, at the end of the day, once again, we're talking about, as I said earlier, the social determinants of health, where you live, where you work, where you play, in this case, even where you shop, has an impact on your health outcomes. So it really brought faith community together. It brought community-based organizations together. It brought healthcare providers together, advocates in the community such as myself. Is it perfect? No. Is there a lot of work to do? Yes. Is it complicated? Is it complex? Yes. Yes, it is. And in order to do this work, I would just say that you have to be willing to reach across the aisle. You have to be willing to, identify both sides and both sides in terms of who can help you carry the water. I like to say, who's going to help me carry the water? If I should fall, or stumble or get tired or get weak, who's going to help me along? Along that path. And the interesting thing about when you're spilling water, you build more flowers.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good. Stan, I remember that day because I remember I was trying to reach out to you to see if you were okay, if there were people that had been involved in that shooting. And I was shocked when you told me that actually your brother was en route to the supermarket with your mother, that she was going to be shopping off on a shopping trip. And of course, had she left just a little bit earlier, she may have been there at the time of the shooting. And I that was a terrible day. That was a terrible day.
Yeah. No. Thank you, Tom. And I remember where I was, for our listeners. And ironically, I was actually at a mosque. With around 12 or 15 other community-based organizers, community leaders, trying to put together a plan on stop the violence.
Oh.
How do we stop the violence in our city? And then to have someone from outside our community drive, X number of hours to intentionally do harm and to hurt and unfortunately kill people, take away lives from our most vulnerable. These were people who, were shopping for other folks. These were the elders of the church. These were, people who were doing acts of kindness. For others who lives was lost. Yeah. So a sad day and challenging day, and we're still, recovering, healing.
Yeah.
And taking back the power. Yeah. So this is a part of taking back the power, changing the narrative, and not waiting, for someone else to come in and do it, for us.
We want to talk a little bit about kindness with you, but before we do, I want to just kind of piggyback on something Lamar just asked you, and that is that you have been in these environments in which you've had really challenging conversations with people around the table, whether it's a table you've been invited to or a table that you built, right? And so are there some pieces of advice you can give others, to our listeners, that about how they engage with others around that table in a way that is civil and allows things to go forward?
Yes. Yeah, I meant to answer. Thank you for that reminder. And that is, what? Definitely, you have to listen. You have to be able to read your audience, know your audience, so to speak. You have to be able to offer, or utilize a certain skill set, whether we say reflective listening or what have you, to actually hit that bullseye. That that's going to resonate with you. People might not remember everything that you said or shared, but they will remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. All right. Did I provide a safe enough environment, space, so that, people are heard, and what is it that we can agree upon? How to, maybe it's not necessarily the what, it can often sometimes be the how, and what I mean by that in terms of you, some folks might say, well, how do we reach, consensus on a particular issue, and that is, what can we agree upon? How can we get to a point that can move this forward? And sometimes you have to wait because the folks that you're meeting with might not be ready to go where you're trying to go, where you're trying to get to. Mm-hmm. So, you have to make sure that it's not about you, it's about the people, it's about the community that you serve and that you're coming alongside with.
We were introduced to an idea a while back, and Lamar often brings us up in the podcast. I'll go ahead and do it this time, which is very similar to what you just said, that you have to take winning off the table. And when you take winning off the table, then it's not about you. And you can really have those conversations that allow things to move forward. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think we would all agree that we're living in a time, and it's not new, but it just seems heightened that we're so divided. The lines seem to be drawn in a lot of different directions, politically, religiously, socially. It just seems to be becoming more and more that we find corners that we're trying to identify, or we identify people by what corner that we think that they're in. Tom and I and others, as we've been interacting with them, are really pushing ourselves to focus on acts of kindness. It's to me, it's a fascinating direction for us to go. So we've got a couple of questions for you about kindness. All right.
Sure.
What is an act of kindness that you've received that's changed your life, that's really impacted you?
Yeah. I'm going to start recently. As I mentioned earlier, I've been involved in this work for 20 years, and I had some trepidation, about starting my own business, Stan Martin Consulting, and working on projects and initiatives that, really mattered to me. And I reached out to a dear friend, and he helped me, develop my business in terms of access to websites, doing my tax information, filing, the whole process, the whole nine. And
good.
And that person is someone who I've been respecting, and admiring their work for a number of years. And they encouraged me, and it gave me also an opportunity to showcase and share my talents and skill, on a larger platform. And they didn't have to do it, and they took the time out, to do that. And 2 years later, I'm happy to say, when most businesses independently, fail, I'm happy to say that now, Stan Martin Consulting is a, minority, business enterprise, MBE certified here in New York State. And also getting ready to launch another business, not for profit, SOAR for solutions as well. So, but my friend who's in this space right here, Tom Klaus, when I needed him, was there for me, when I was debating about which path I should take, and to step out there on faith. So that act of kindness created a ripple effect that not only changed my life, changed my family and the community in which I reside today.
That was a surprise.
Yeah.
I'm really honored. Thank you, Stan. That means a lot. Thank you.
I think that's a great example of what we're looking at is how do we touch people's lives? How do we reach out and make a difference? And just the short time that I've known you, Stan, and the story that you've been telling, I can imagine that you're paying that forward in multiple ways. Can you give us an example? You don't have to give us names or details, but what is something maybe you can think of that you did that you're hoping changes somebody's life? Can you think of an example?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because now, as a result of that story that I just shared with you, it's up to me to pay it forward. So I operate in a space where though you don't see a lot of Black professionals or healthcare providers. So it's incumbent upon me, to reach back and bring other or the next generation of health professionals who look like me, who are color, are from marginalized communities, to bring them forward. And that's what I've been doing, since that time, making sure that I'm creating a pathway or I'm a part of, assisting the next generation, to not just continue, but to take this work, even higher, so that it doesn't get lost, so that then they are charged with bringing others forward, as well. We when you look at the healthcare profession, when you look at this particular field, you don't see a lot of African American males or women, people of color in it. So how do we change that? Well, that's how we do it. We create that ripple effects, that resonate with folks, that will be willing to help carry the water, and if one should, fall or get tired or what have you, there's others to help. And then you have more flowers. You have more professionals. You have more people who look like them, in these spaces that previously didn't have opportunities or didn't know how to navigate, to create real change at every level.
Well, Stan, you are the first person to answer those two questions for us.
Mhm.
We were inspired to include those in our interviews by the podcast that will drop in a couple of weeks. Our interview with Jules Casey of hashtag Be Humankind. And I tell you what, how you handled those questions, and just says, wow, we're on a right track here with these. I mean, it's a great question for people to think. I'm a little speechless because I did not. I mean, I've just considered you such a good friend and colleague all these years. I just wanted to help, and I was. I'm a little speechless that you shared that.
Tom speechless, Lamar. Is this Lamar?
I was thinking the very same thing. Tom is speechless. How does that happen?
He's like, what? but thank you. That was, wow. I just didn't expect that. But thank you. That was very nice. Well, we're going to go to a silly question, and then we're going to give you a chance to ask us a question, okay, or two.
Sure.
Yeah, however much time we have. So, okay, Stan, what people don't know about you is that you were a point guard in college basketball, right?
Yes.
And we know you were that former.
Wait. We got to back up.
What?
I was a stellar point guard.
I'm sorry, you were a stellar.
Stan the man in college as a point guard.
Stan the man, stellar point guard in college. Yes. And Lamar and I we're big WNBA fans and women's college hoops fans, and as you know, in Frederick we have the Flying Cows in the basketball league that we go to. But here's a question that we can only ask a stellar point guard. How do we know that the point guards we are watching are really any good?
Simple. Simple question. Easy question. I thought you were going to throw me a tough one. You ready?
Yeah.
They make other players around them better. It's not about them. They make others around them better.
Wow.
Great response.
Yeah.
You think about that, their ability to call plays, to be feeding the ball to the basket, setting up people to be open. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's and that's not a bad lesson for life either.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
You nailed it, Stan.
Oh wait, Stan set us up.
Yeah. So I'm still running the point.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, thank you, Stan. All right, so you got any questions for us or a question for us?
Well, I want to be respectful and mindful of your time, and I just ask you guys, how are you utilizing your platform to help others?
Oh wow.
Tom, while you're thinking, let me give my first response.
Please do. Yeah.
Because I know you prefer that I go first in this question.
Yeah,
it
I do.
Seems like a pattern. Gives him a chance to think up a better one than my response. But honestly, I think, first of all, your question is about how do we help others? How's this impacting others? I honestly, my first part of that response is, I think it's really helped me in doing this podcast. We have seen we're trying to be as transparent as we can, and we see the failures that we had over our lives and careers as well in positive communication and being able to be transparent and being able to set a good table. I mean, or we think we've had good work in the past. Don't get me wrong, but we've seen the challenges that we've had in the past that I think that I could have done better, and so I'm really working on that for myself. And same thing with this idea of finding ways to act in a kinder, gentler way. But I think that in that, I think that's also what we're trying to encourage others to think about. Finding ways to listen, finding ways to be part of what your community, finding a way to build relationships, to find those third space places, as well as creating a safe environment to have the conversations. I'm hearing it a lot more in the conversations that I'm having locally, because I do have some local listeners and friends, that I'm beginning to hear that language being used in a positive way. So I'm hoping that translates out to the broader audience as well. So that would be my first response.
Thank you.
I really like what Lamar said, and so the temptation is just to say simply ditto, but I'll go a little bit further than that. I think that one of the things that we're trying to put across to people is, when you're able to sit down with people and have a conversation and connect with them, the thing that begins to creep into your mind is, no matter how different you thought they were from you, they're actually more like you than what you perhaps wanted to admit. In other words, there's greater that binds us. There's more that keeps us connected than what separates us. And I think that's a contribution that we can make through this. And I think part of that, that also applies in terms of, I think we've all been fairly appalled at what has happened to some of the concern around diversity and inclusivity, and so we are striving to try to bring people in with that there are differences between them and us, and ideological, racial, ethnic, gender, et cetera, to demonstrate again that there is more that binds us together than keeps us apart. We have a lot of work to do. We are imperfect vessels in trying to make this happen, but we are hoping that we're making some small contribution in some small parts of the world that can have, as you said earlier, a ripple effect to others.
Well, Stan, I want to personally thank you. It's been great getting to know you this brief time that we've been connected. And I know you and Tom have had a long history, and he's referenced you often to me. But I hope that we can continue to stay connected. I really value this time that I've had with you. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you, Lamar, and thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this conversation, and I'm looking forward to getting to third space.
All right.
As we move forward.
It's always great to spend some time with you, Stan. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
That was great.
Yeah, that was a really good interview. Stan did a great job, and so much of the work that he does applies to the things we've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah.
It was really good to get an insight into the work that he's doing in Buffalo. So I'm glad we had that opportunity.
Yeah. So does anything stand out to you that just resonated with you from that interview?
I mean, you and I have talked a lot about how we grew up around this farm table, this kitchen table, and the value of having these conversations in, third space conversations around the table. And Stan has the same concepts in the work that he's doing two things that really stood out in relationship to that. One was the importance of creating a table for people to be able to come to in a non-threatening way, a safe way, but also the idea of resetting that table. That sometimes you have to step back and reset the table, and I envision a lot of different ways that can be understood. But one is, bringing the right people to the table, and also allowing people at the table to have that voice that they have maybe not had before.
Yeah. Well, the thing that is memorable for me, and this is going to sound really, really silly, is when we ask him the question about what makes for a good point guard.
Point guard as in a point guard in basketball, which
right.
Stan was. Right?
Point guard in basketball. Well, but Stan reminded us he was a stellar point guard.
That's right. He had a qualifier. Yeah.
I love that. But his answer, I thought, was just terrific. He says it's a very simple answer. The point guard is good when they make everybody around them look better.
Yeah.
And be better. And I thought, wow. First of all, that's a great response in the context of basketball, but it's a great way to think about how we live our lives. Yeah. Are we making other people better? And in how we engage.
And in a culture that seems to have developed over the years it's about me,
mm-hmm.
the me culture, that to think about really my job or my role can be to help other people be successful.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's valuable.
Yeah. Well, it was a great interview, and I hope we can get Stan back on sometime and catch up with him and find out how things are going in Buffalo and have another conversation like this. The guy he's a gem. He's a gem.
So. Absolutely. Thank you for introducing Stan to me, because I think that's going to be one of the pluses that I take out of this as well.
I think you're going to enjoy having Stan as a friend.
Yeah.
All right, Lamar, have a great week.
You as well. What's the term that you use to encourage a golfer to keep your left arm stiff? Is that right?
No.
Is that not right?
Play well.
Oh, play well. Is that it?
Play well.
Okay.
Play well.
All right.
As opposed to play good, but play well. Yes.
Well, you play well then.
All right. Thank you very much. You do the same. Bye-bye.
Will do. Bye.
Tom here. Thank you for listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. Remember to click on subscribe to get notices about new episodes, and be sure to like and share the podcast as well. Opinions and ideas expressed in this podcast are solely those of Lamar Roth and Tom Klaus, and we'd like to hear your opinions and ideas too. You can leave us a voice message on Spotify, or you can email us at the addresses found in the show notes. Also, in the show notes, you can find links to some of the things we talked about today, so you can check them out yourself. Until next time, keep moving forward toward third space. We don't know diddly squat, but we do have opinions.